According to the prophets, Israel, regathered from all nations, restored to her own land and converted, is yet to have her greatest exaltation and glory. She was not only scattered and taken out of her land, but and moved to almost every country in the world, but she, according to God's promise, is going to be regathered. We've seen that happen over the decades now. Just next week, they celebrate their 71st year as a reborn nation. So that's still happening. But the greatest exaltation and glory for Israel is still future. God is not done with the nation of Israel. And it's wrong for the church to say, well, we have replaced Israel. That is not true. Not true. In fact, Israel is going to be much larger in the future, according to the land area that God promised Abraham. Right now, they're just a sliver of what they should be there. And there are passages here to bear that out. Most of these passages, the references here, deal with an everlasting kingdom and Jesus as the king there. We also read in the Old Testament that God's going to set up David as king over Israel during the millennium, whereas Jesus will be king over the entire earth. In the light of this truth, it follows that lack of trust in one area leads to overt disobedience in other areas. It has been aptly stated that if a man will lie to you, he will also steal from you. Lying and stealing seem to go kind of hand in hand. Lying is actually stealing the truth, right, and replacing it with falsehood. This was an act of trust and obedience to God. The Jews were trusting God's provision by not farming for an entire year, right? We're going to let God take care of us. That's what I'm having to do right now. However, in defiance of his provision and instruction, the Jews committed idolatry, child sacrifice. Let's stop right there, America. Stop right there. And just this year, right? Some states have passed legislation which, if an abortion is botched and the child ends up living, we can still let it die, right? Even though it's been fully born there. Don't think of these other cultures as totally pagan and think of America as a Christian nation. We do have our roots as a Christian nation, okay? But our culture is getting increasingly secularized, isn't it? We can see that on the news. And then ritual prostitution. Dr. Bai adds, I wonder what would be America's judgment. Maybe praying for our nation. Respect for conduct outlined in the scriptures and Sabbath years of rest for the land has been ignored for their own selfish profit, and judgment was inevitable as promised, right? You remember the passages, the 2 chapters, Leviticus 26 and Deuteronomy 28. The wake-up call came as military assaults were lodged against the nation, right? He promised that foreign nations would come in and take them out. And so the northern kingdom is going to be seeing the Assyrians, and the southern kingdom is going to be seeing the Babylonians. Jerusalem found itself surrounded by a formidable pagan enemy, just as God promised. The details inscribed on the Taylor prism independently confirm the events recorded in 2 Kings 19, and it's actually 2 Kings 18 and 19, those 2 chapters together, 2 Chronicles 32, and Isaiah 37. And there are a few verses out of Isaiah 39. Sennacherib, king of Assyria, invaded the land and held Jerusalem siege in the days of Judah's king Hezekiah. So King Hezekiah is the Israel king in the southern kingdom. Sennacherib, his reign is 701 to 681 BC. 701 to 681. The Taylor prism is dated right in the middle. That's 691 BC. Okay? So this kind of tells you where we are. God temporarily spared the city for his own sake and for my servant David's sake. So let me see if I can set up some kind of history here. The Taylor prism records the first 8 campaigns of King Sennacherib. The first 8 campaigns. On the 3rd campaign, he surrounds the town of Lachish, which is mentioned in 2 Chronicles 32. They basically surround the city. They starve them out. They lay a siege ramp into the city. They breach the walls, and then they take over, basically. The Taylor prism records 46 cities of Judah fall into this king. But then they get to Jerusalem, and we don't read that he's conquered Jerusalem. We don't read that Hezekiah has been made captive. In fact, King Hezekiah is the only foreign king that is not captured, according to the Taylor Prism. Something different happened at this time. And a lot of us remember maybe reading in our scriptures about the angel that came into the camp and killed 185,000. This is that time. Okay? God's promising Hezekiah, not an arrow will be shot, not a shield will come into Jerusalem. They will not lay a siege ramp to the city. You've got my word on it. Okay? And yet there's an army of over 200,000 Assyrian soldiers, which are ruthless. Okay? Nineveh was a very ruthless city. They would cut your head off and put him on poles. This is why Jonah did not want to go to Nineveh. Okay? Because these people were barbaric. And yet there are over 200,000 of these people coming, archers and ground soldiers and chariots and all of that. Well, one night the angel goes into the camp, the angel of the Lord goes into the camp, and 185,000 perish in one night. So the sun rises, and they see 185,000 of their almost over 200,000 soldiers dead. I calculated that out. That's about 91% of the whole army decimated in one night. Okay? The Egyptian records, as we'll see, record a great multitude of Assyrians died. The Babylonian records record the same thing. And even the Greek historians, like Herodotus, record a great multitude of Assyrians passed away, okay, died. We'll be giving you the Egyptian story, which is not the truth, but it's an interesting little story. We'll give you that a little bit later. But 185,000 in one night. Let's do the math on that, shall we? Let's say night is 12 hours of darkness. Okay, we'll just round off 12 hours. 185,000 soldiers in 12 hours. 12 hours comes out to be 43,200 seconds. Right? So how many people would have to die every second for 12 hours? It comes out to be a little over 4. Okay? A little over 4 soldiers killed every second for 43,200 seconds. Okay, so we're talking some one angel, what power that particular warrior angel had. Okay? If it's the angel of the Lord, then so be it. Okay? But that's, to me, is amazing. You start looking at it kind of in detail like that. But he says that the city will not be captured also for David's sake. Right? Because David, even though he's long has been king in the past, he's still going to be king of Jerusalem in the future as well. King of all Israel, in fact, during the millennium. Therefore, thus saith the Lord concerning the king of Assyria, Sennacherib, he shall not come into this city, here's the promise, nor shoot an arrow there, nor come before it with shields, nor cast a bank against it. Right? He won't do that. By the way that he came, by the same shall he return, and shall not come into this city, saith the Lord. Do you think the king's coming into the city? All Hezekiah had was God's word. You know, he can see with his eyes by the forces surrounding the city, but God says he's not going to come into the city. Okay? For I will defend this city, God says, to save it for my own sake and for my servant David's sake. Then the angel of the Lord went forth and smote in the camp of the Assyrians 180, that's 80, and 5,000, 185,000. And when they arose early in the morning, behold, they were all dead corpses. So Sennacherib, king of Assyria, departed, I should say so, with his shattered army, and went and returned and dwelt in Nineveh. Divine judgment on Israel had been temporarily averted, and right, they weren't taken out this time. And divine favor had been demonstrated, but Israel's continued disobedience paved the road to future captivity. There is an end to God's patience eventually. Okay, but God is long-suffering. The prophet announced in Isaiah 39, 6 and 7, Behold, the days come that all that is in thine house, and that which thy fathers have laid up in store until this day, shall be carried to Babylon, and nothing shall be left, saith the Lord. Right? The Assyrians weren't the ones who took out Jerusalem and the southern kingdom. It was going to be the Babylonians, as we told you earlier. Right? The Assyrians took out the northern kingdom. Behold, the days come that all that is in thine house, and that which thy fathers have laid up in store till this day, shall be carried to Babylon. Nothing shall be left, saith the Lord. And of thy sons that shall issue from thee, which thou shalt beget, the next generation, shall they take away. And they shall be eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon. During the siege described in the Taylor Prism, Sennacherib shut Hezekiah up like a caged bird. Right? He was basically trapped in his own capital city, but the city wasn't captured, and Hezekiah wasn't killed. Right? They encamped around Jerusalem, but they did not breach the walls, and they did not come in.